Welcome to Ms. Cunningham's really fast EOC Review Part Dos, Communication, Writing, Research, and Logic. This is going to go by super fast because there's a lot of information, so make sure you take notes on your EOC Review terms and concepts, pause when you need to, write down questions, and be prepared for tomorrow. First, let's go to communication. There are a few terms you need to know for communication that deal with evaluating and analyzing sources: critique, summary, and paraphrase. What we need to know here is that a critique is going to evaluate information and judge whether the information is good information, whether it is presented well, anything like that. A summary is going to be a very short analysis of information, and a paraphrase is going to be a word-for-word analysis of the information, basically summing it up in your own words. So let's take a look at an example. Here is a big paragraph about mustaches. So this paragraph about mustaches talks about it being used in art, it gives specific examples, and so on and so on, ending in the Fu Manchu mustache, which we'll talk about later. So a critique of this paragraph might look something like this. It will show that it does an excellent job reviewing mustaches in art, and it gives several well-known artistic examples in different fields. So this critique is a critique because it evaluates it, says it does good or bad, and then it explains why it does well at presenting the information or it does poorly at presenting the information. That is what makes this a critique. Next is a summary. You see the summary is very short in comparison to this long paragraph. The summary does a quick analysis, just shows what is going on in this paragraph. This summary does not list any specific examples that this main paragraph lists. It leaves those examples out and just gets at the very essence. See, a paraphrase is much longer than the summary because it goes almost sentence by sentence and just rephrases everything. Sometimes you will shorten it to make it easier for yourself, so it might be shorter than the original, but it's going to be close to the same. It does list the specific examples that are listed in the original. And there's our Fu Manchu mustache. So, moving on to speech structure. So, speech structure, there are 4 different speech structures we need to know. These are all very self-explanatory, but I'm going to go over them with you anyway. First is sequential. This is the same as chronological. It means in order. So if our speech is about how to grow a mustache, it might be stop shaving, let it grow, and embrace the mustache that suits you, etc., etc. That would be sequential. Next, problem solution. This type of speech is going to present a problem and explain a solution. So if your problem is you can't grow a mustache, the solution might be that you use Rogaine or try frequent shaving. Next is compare-contrast. This type of speech is going to compare and contrast 2 different things. So first you have, in this speech, you could compare a chevron mustache to an imperial mustache. Cause-effect speech is also self-explanatory. It's going to give you a cause and explain the effects of that cause. So if your cause is growing a mustache, the effects may be that you will look older, people will trust you, and you will be very attractive to the ladies. Moving on to rhetorical devices. Here is a big long paragraph that will give us all our rhetorical device needs, giving us information on the dolly, the horseshoe, and the walrus. So first, a rhetorical question. Remember that a rhetorical question is a question that is asked but no answer is expected. So here's one: which mustache is the right mustache? Next, parallelism. Always remember that parallelism is repeating the same grammatical structure over and over. Remember, the good example I like to use is to the window, to the wall. Here's an example: the wicked dolly, manly horseshoe, and intimidating walrus. You see our construction here is adjective noun, adjective noun, adjective noun. Next is repetition. Repetition is pretty easy to point out. It's sometimes signaled by this word again. So we have one must have a mustache, and again, one must have a mustache. Next, analogy. Remember, an analogy is similar to a metaphor or simile in that it compares 2 things, but an analogy is different because it extends that metaphor or simile by trying to prove a point or make a statement about one of the things it's talking about. So here's an example. Choosing the appropriate mustache is like choosing the right spouse. So there's a simile, but we move further by saying choosing incorrectly might end in disaster that you may be stuck with for a while. So by comparing a mustache to a spouse, we have made the point that both could end in disaster and both you can be stuck with for a while. Finally is hyperbole, which remember is exaggeration. Choosing the wrong mustache can be fatal. This is an exaggeration. You will not die if you pick the wrong mustache, but that exaggeration proves a point. Moving on to writing. There are a few things we need to know about writing. First is a thesis statement. Remember that a thesis statement is explains the overall idea of what you're going to be writing about or reading about. There are two main parts to a thesis statement. The main topics. So remember, these I've referred to as the directions, but these are the main things you're going to be talking about in your paper, showing the organization. Then you have the overall point. This is the main topic you are writing on. So you have to have the overall point, the main topic. One can have an attractive mustache, and your main topic explain how you're going to prove that with the pencil, the painter's brush, and the walrus mustache. Next, transitional devices. So transitional devices like first and in contrast help the reader transition between one part or one sentence to another of your essay. So first is a good transition. First, second, third, next are good transitions to give order to your paper. In contrast is a good transition in between paragraphs or sentences in order to show the relationship between parts of your essay. Remember, in contrast will show a difference between one sentence and the next, and stuff like in addition or furthermore will show similarity between the two. Next is vivid words. Remember, vivid words can also be referred to as precise words. You want words, unlike long, that just explain something that really paints a vivid image, like cascading. No mustache versus clean bare face. The second two point a very good picture in your head of what's going on. The first two don't. So you need to pick words like this. Now, sometimes they will give you choices between lots of good words, like cascading versus drooping. Those both paint a good picture, but you want to go with the one that's most precise and accurate. So if you have a great flowing manly mustache, it would be cascading. If you have like a gross saggy mustache, it would be drooping. Moving on to irrelevant sentences. This should be easy. The main trick for this is pick out the topic of the paragraph. So for this one, it's about choosing the right mustache. Which mustache is right for you? Now, this sentence is irrelevant. My favorite type is an English mustache. That's irrelevant because my favorite type of mustache doesn't really influence or doesn't really matter to how to choose the right one for you. Now, next, we have some random terms we need to know when analyzing any kind of writing. So here is a full article on how Disney has changed its rules on how its park workers can grow beards. And then it also goes on to list different rules for park workers at Disney. First, we need to think of the attitude. Attitude is what the author thinks about the subject they are writing on, his attitude towards that subject. So attitude, in this one, the attitude may be kind of amused because they kind of think it's funny, you can tell. Audience is who would be interested in reading this. So it may be park workers, or it may be people who go to Disney World a lot, or it may be people who are interested in dress code rules. Bias. Bias is important to know about an author if they have any beliefs or experiences that might affect how they would talk about the topic they are talking about. The only bias that would be at all relevant for this is if someone is against dress code rules or against Disney. Next is purpose. This one's a little easier because they give you options. Purpose can be to inform, persuade, explain, describe, or entertain. Sometimes you can have best way to do this is to do process of elimination and get down to a couple. So we know it's not going to be to persuade, it's not trying to convince you, it's not explaining a process, and it's not really describing anything in detail. It could be to inform you of the rules at Disney or to entertain you. I would go with entertain because if it was going to inform you, it'd probably list more rules and go into more depth, and it just picked the entertaining rules, like about undergarments and eyebrows. So this is probably to entertain. Moving on to research. Research, you need to focus. So you want to make sure that you don't have something that is wide, like history of mustaches, that covers a long span of time. You want it more focused, like hipster mustaches in the 2010s. For citations, remember to cite everything. If they ask you what needs to be cited, make sure anything that is taken from a source, whether it is paraphrased or if it is quoted, it needs to be cited. Primary and secondary sources. If we go back to the idea of Disney dress code, if you were writing a research paper on that topic, then a primary source would be an interview with someone who works there, like my friend David Spinney. A secondary source could be that article we just read, Fashion Statements, the Disney Look. That would be a secondary because it is secondhand information. You've gotten it from someone else. First-hand information comes from David Spinney, our actual park worker. Next, reliability, credibility, and validity. These three things are different, but as far as the EOC is concerned, they're pretty much the same. All this is going to ask you is to choose the best source for a research, any kind of research topic. The best source is first going to be on topic, specific to the topic you're looking at, and is also going to have a good author that has credibility in that field, background in the field that you're studying. It's going to be, if at all possible, peer-reviewed, meaning people in the field have looked at it, and it is going to be up to date. Moving on to logic. First, an inference. Remember, making an inference means that you are reading into something that is not directly stated. So, suddenly I noticed the man on stage yelling loudly in German had a toothbrush mustache. This we can infer was Hitler. It is not directly stated, but we can infer that. Remember that inductive reasoning is specific to general. We take specific examples and make a general conclusion from it. So Rudy, Jose, and Christian all have no mustaches. 10th graders can't grow mustaches is our general conclusion. Deductive is the opposite. Our general idea is 10th graders can't grow mustaches, and our specific examples are Chase, Joey, and Isaac don't have mustaches. A false premise is pretty easy. It is just stating something that is false and beginning an argument with an idea that is false, like every man can grow a mustache. If you try to go from there, it won't work because that is a false premise. An analogy. This is a little bit different than the analogy we talked about before, although it's the same thing, just looks a little different. Remember one of these? Mustache is to upper lip as blank is to chin. The answer for that one would be beard. It's trying to show the same relationship. This one and this one have the same relationship as this one and this one. A rebuttal is an opposite statement. So a rebuttal to every man can grow a mustache might be, no, every man can't grow a mustache. It's just an opposite statement. Fact and opinion. A fact is proven by science and can't be refuted, and an opinion is just someone's opinion. Moving to logical fallacies. Logical fallacies appeal to fear, trying to scare someone into agreeing with you instead of using reason. If you don't wear a mustache, your upper lip may freeze. Personal attack, ad hominem, attacking the person instead of actually attacking the arguments. Don't vote for Nate because he has an ugly mustache. False dilemma, giving someone two choices when there are really more. Like, if you don't have a mustache, you will not be a man. Slippery slope, the idea that if one thing happens, then lots of other things and more serious consequences will happen because of it. You grow a mustache, you'll grow a beard, and then you'll lose your job. Non sequitur, these are things that do not follow. So, really it's random. Sam has a mustache, so we obviously can't play football. It's trying to make a connection between two things that don't have a connection. Next, false analogy. Making a comparison in one thing, things are alike in one place, so you think they're going to be alike in others. Like, Hitler had facial hair, Max has facial hair, so Max is a fascist. Hitler and Max both have facial hair, but Max is not a fascist. False authority. If I said a mustache is easy to grow, I would have false authority because I don't know anything about mustaches, thank goodness, and me saying that would mean nothing. I have authority in English, not on mustaches. Finally, persuasive devices. So, bandwagon, everyone's doing it. Loaded words, using great words like luscious, burly, and rugged to convince someone of something. Testimonial, it can be a star, a famous person, or it can be a regular person just saying how they use something and that it works. When I had a mustache, I got all the chicks. Name calling. So this isn't just calling someone dumb. Name calling is when you call out your competitor instead of propping up your own thing. So petite handlebar is not as good as a regular one. Misuse of statistics. Remember, this is not using incorrect statistics, just statistics that make your product look better when it